Two people can live in the same city, earn very different salaries, and still end up with opposite financial lives. In this video, we break down why the person making $72,000 can easily end up wealthier than the person making $155,000. The difference usually has very little to do with intelligence, hustle, or even opportunity. It comes down to habits, fixed costs, lifestyle inflation, hidden spending traps, and the systems that shape your money without you noticing. We'll look at the invisible patterns that keep high earners stressed, the math behind everyday decisions, and the practical rules that help ordinary incomes build extraordinary stability over time. If you want more videos on investing, saving, financial behavior, and building long-term freedom, subscribe to Liam Invests. Full script. The person making $72,000 a year can absolutely end up wealthier than the person making $155,000. Same age, same city, same general stage of life. And 10 years later, one of them feels calm around money, invests consistently, has real flexibility, and sleeps fine at night. The other one earns more, looks more successful, and somehow still feels like one bad month could throw everything off. That sounds backwards, which is exactly why it matters. Because most people still assume money problems are mainly income problems. They think the fix is one more raise, one better job title, one bigger year. And to be fair, income does matter. It gives you options. It gives you breathing room. It can absolutely make life easier. But after a certain point, income stops being the main story. The main story becomes structure. It becomes the rules your life runs on when you are not thinking about them. It becomes your fixed costs, your defaults, your habits after a raise, your behavior when you feel stressed, your need to look successful, your tolerance for friction, your ability to delay a decision for 3 days instead of 3 minutes. That is where financial lives start splitting apart. So let's look at two people. Jake makes $155,000 a year. Good job, nice apartment, newer car, orders delivery a little too often, upgrades his tech pretty regularly. His life looks polished. He has the kind of lifestyle that photographs well. Maya makes $72,000. She has a normal car, keeps things for a long time, travels a bit, eats out sometimes. Her life does not scream money. Nobody is looking at her and thinking, wow, she must be crushing it financially. And yet, if you actually open their financial lives side by side, the result would surprise a lot of people. Maya has an emergency fund. Jake has stress. Maya has investments. Jake has payments. Maya has options. Jake has commitments. That gap does not happen because one person is morally superior. It does not happen because one person is a monk. It does not happen because one person never has fun. It happens because one person built a life that leaves room. And room is what turns income into wealth. Here's where this gets interesting. The fastest way to stay broke on a high income is to quietly turn every raise into a new monthly obligation. That is the trap. Most people never blow up their finances in one dramatic moment. It is usually much less cinematic than that. It is a nicer apartment after the promotion, a more expensive car once the paycheck looks stronger, a few more subscriptions, a little more convenience spending, a friend group that normalizes more expensive habits, a standard of living that creeps upward so smoothly you barely notice it happening. Then one day you make good money and somehow still feel fragile because your salary rose and your required lifestyle rose with it. That is the part people miss. A high income feels powerful right up until you realize all of it is already spoken for. And once your monthly life becomes expensive enough, your income stops feeling like freedom and starts feeling like maintenance. That's a very different experience. A person earning $72,000 with low fixed costs can have more actual financial power than a person earning $155,000 with too many obligations. Because wealth is not just about what comes in, it is about what stays, what compounds, what buys you time, what protects you when life gets weird. And life always gets weird eventually. A job loss, a medical bill, a bad market, a family issue, a move you did not plan for, a year where your motivation falls off a cliff. Money works best when it gives you margin during those moments. That's why the first thing to understand is this. Your financial life is shaped less by the big flex purchase and more by your baseline. Your baseline is everything. The rent or mortgage, the car payment, the subscriptions, the food habits, the debt payments. The standard you have decided is normal. Once a cost becomes normal, your brain stops questioning it. And that is dangerous. Because now the money leaves automatically and your emotions adjust around what is left. This is why two people can earn the same amount and feel completely different. One has built a life that can breathe. The other has built a life that must keep running perfectly. Those are not the same life. And there is a psychological piece here that deserves way more attention. A lot of spending is not really about utility. It is about identity. You're not buying a thing. You are buying a version of yourself. The version who has their life together. The version who belongs in that neighborhood. The version who can casually say yes to the expensive dinner. The version who looks like they are winning. That impulse is deeply human. Nobody is above it. We all absorb signals from people around us. Friends, coworkers, social media, whatever rich person apartment tour happened to hit your feed on a Tuesday night. And the dangerous part is that identity spending rarely feels irrational in the moment. It feels deserved. It feels motivating. It feels like progress. Until you zoom out, then you realize a shocking amount of your spending was a conversation with other people that they barely noticed. That is expensive. And it gets worse when income rises. Because the higher your income goes, the easier it becomes to justify things that used to feel excessive. You stop asking, do I need this? You start asking, can I afford the monthly payment? That sounds like a small change. It is not. That question has wrecked a lot of wealth. Because can I afford the payment is a much lower standard than, is this helping my long-term life? A $700 car payment can be affordable. It can also be an absolute disaster. Same with a luxury apartment. Same with constant upgrades. Same with a rotation of convenience spending that turns every tiring day into an expensive one. Once you start evaluating life through payment size instead of total impact, you open the door to a lot of polished financial mistakes. And this is where the math starts getting a little rude. Let's say you spend $400 more per month than necessary on a car. That does not sound like a life-changing decision. For a lot of people, that just sounds like a nicer car. But $400 a month is $4,800 a year. Invest that difference at 7% for 30 years, and you are looking at roughly $450,000. That is the real cost conversation. It is rarely the sticker price. It is the lifetime effect of the difference. A lot of everyday spending decisions are small enough to feel harmless and large enough to quietly erase $500,000. That is an uncomfortable sentence. It is also why high earners get confused. They think, I'm making good money. Why am I not moving faster? Because your leak does not have to be dramatic to be expensive. It just has to be consistent. That applies to more than cars. It applies to housing too. Housing is one of the few decisions that can shape your entire financial life for years in both directions. Stretching hard for the right place feels sophisticated. You tell yourself it is where you live. It matters. And it does matter. The issue is that housing is not just rent or mortgage. A more expensive home usually brings more expensive furniture, more pressure to decorate, higher utility costs, more social expectations, sometimes a longer commute, and a general feeling that your whole life now has to match the address. This is why one upgrade often pulls 5 more in behind it. You buy one thing at a higher standard, and suddenly the surrounding things look wrong. That is how a nicer couch turns into a new rug, coffee table, lighting, wall art, and a Saturday afternoon spent casually destroying your savings in a home store. It sounds funny because it is true. Lifestyle upgrades rarely travel alone. And if you want a practical rule here, it is simple. Before you buy something significant, ask one question. What else will this purchase quietly make me want? That question can save you thousands. Sometimes the answer is nothing. Great, move on. Sometimes the answer is, honestly, a lot. That means the real price is much higher than it looks. Now, let's shift to one of the most underrated wealth-building skills on earth, the ability to delay. This sounds boring. It is wildly powerful. A huge percentage of spending happens because wanting and buying have become almost the same action. You see it, you feel the pull, you click, done. No gap, no evaluation, no room for the emotion to cool off. That is perfect for companies. It is terrible for your bank account. Because desire is loud at the beginning, then it fades. A lot of purchases only survive if you buy them fast. If you force them to sit in the corner for 72 hours, they start looking less like destiny and more like a random Tuesday impulse. That is useful. The goal here is not to become joyless. The goal is to separate real desire from temporary stimulation, because those are very different things. One still looks good after 3 days. The other mysteriously disappears once the ad is gone and you got enough sleep. And sleep matters more than people think in personal finance. Tired people spend differently. Stressed people spend differently. Overworked people spend differently. Convenience gets more appealing. Impulse control gets weaker. You stop optimizing for long-term returns and start optimizing for relief. That is why some spending habits are less about math and more about emotional design. If your life is exhausting, your spending will often become a form of self-medication. Food delivery, upgrades, treat purchases, tiny rewards for surviving the week. Again, very human. Yet this is where money can quietly become anesthesia. You are no longer spending for value. You are spending to change your mood. That usually gets expensive fast. This is why the strongest financial systems reduce the number of decisions that depend on your mood. They automate the good behavior first. Savings leaves the account early. Investing happens automatically. Bills are structured. Emergency money lives in a separate place. Raising your savings rate is tied to future raises. You build the system when you are clear-headed, so the tired version of you has fewer chances to improvise. That matters because willpower is inconsistent. Good systems are boring. Boring is excellent for building wealth. Think about how many people say they want to invest more. They mean it. They really do. Then the paycheck arrives, life happens, some money gets used, and the investing decision turns into a monthly debate. Debates are dangerous. A transfer that happens automatically does not care whether you had a weird day, a stressful meeting, or a sudden urge to reinvent your wardrobe. It just happens. And those automatic decisions, repeated for years, are exactly how ordinary incomes build extraordinary results. Here's a mid-video truth that a lot of financial advice misses. The real problem is often not overspending. It is overspending on fixed life. That is a bigger issue than random splurges. A spontaneous $200 mistake is annoying. A monthly lifestyle that is $1,000 too expensive is structural. Structural problems beat motivational speeches every time. That is why high earners who look disciplined can still be stuck. Their life is simply too heavy. Their income is carrying too much. And every time they get a raise, it disappears into maintaining the machine. This is why one of the best habits after a raise is deciding in advance where most of it goes. If you leave the raise sitting in your checking account, your lifestyle will notice before your future does. That is just how humans work. You do not need to save every extra dollar. Life is allowed to improve. You should enjoy progress. Yet if every raise immediately becomes more visible living, you will stay oddly dependent on earning high forever. That is a rough position, because the whole point of higher income is supposed to be more security, more choice, more distance from panic. If it only buys prettier versions of the same stress, something has gone wrong. Let's make this concrete. Imagine two people both get a $10,000 raise. Person one absorbs most of it into a better apartment, some more dining out, a nicer car payment, and upgraded day-to-day life. Person two sends $7,000 of it into retirement, brokerage, and extra cash reserves, then uses the rest for a few enjoyable upgrades. After 1 year, the difference feels small. After 5 years, it is obvious. After 15 years, they are living in different financial universes. That is what compounding does. It rewards distance between income and lifestyle. And no, this does not mean you need some hyper-detailed budget spreadsheet with 17 categories and a dashboard that looks like NASA. Most people do not need more complexity. They need better signal. The signal I like most is savings rate. What percentage of your gross income is actually being saved and invested? That number cuts through a lot of nonsense. A person making $60,000 and saving 20% is building something solid. A person making $160,000 and saving 3% is mostly financing a lifestyle. Those are very different trajectories. And savings rate works because it captures the truth quickly. If it is rising, you are probably moving in the right direction. If it is flat, fine, at least you know. If it is falling while your income rises, lifestyle inflation is probably chewing through your progress. That is worth noticing early. Because the worst financial trap is the one that feels like advancement while it is quietly slowing you down. Let's talk about upgrading things. This one drains more money than people realize because it hides inside normal behavior. The phone still works, the laptop is fine, the car is functional, the couch is acceptable, everything is basically okay. Yet boredom shows up wearing premium packaging. Now the current version feels old, slightly embarrassing, a little behind. So you replace perfectly usable things because the newer version is smoother, cleaner, shinier, or somehow more you. Individually, these decisions rarely look crazy. Together, they can destroy huge amounts of long-term wealth, especially because upgrades create a rhythm. And once upgrading becomes part of your identity, your spending gains a permanent background hum. You are always improving something, refreshing something, optimizing something, replacing something that had years left. That is a costly hobby pretending to be normal adulthood. A useful question here is simple. What exactly can the new version do that the current one truly cannot? Not faster, not prettier, not marginally better, actually cannot. That question eliminates a lot of fake necessity. And I think this is one of the biggest money advantages quiet wealthy people have. They are less emotionally reactive to age. They can let things stay normal. They can use things for a long time. They do not confuse new with valuable. That sounds minor. It is not minor. It changes the entire economic profile of a life. Now let's get to one of my favorite reframes because it makes spending decisions much more honest. Every purchase costs hours of your life. Literal hours. Take your monthly take-home pay. Divide by the number of hours you actually work. That is a rough version of your after-tax hourly reality. Now put purchases through that filter. A $600 impulse becomes maybe 20 hours of your life. A luxury weekend becomes 60 hours. A higher car payment becomes an ongoing tax on your future weeks. This does something important. It turns money from an abstract number into a piece of your finite time. And time feels different. People who would casually say yes to an item at a store will hesitate once they realize it equals 3 full working days. That hesitation is healthy. Because money comes back, time does not. Some purchases absolutely pass this test. A mattress you use every night, good shoes if you walk a lot, a laptop you earn income from, experiences you genuinely care about and will remember. Great, buy them happily. The point is clarity. You want your spending to reflect actual value, not vague drift. Because vague drift is how people end up earning excellent money and feeling oddly empty about where it all went. And underneath all of this is one final metric that matters more than almost anyone talks about: your runway. If your income stopped tomorrow, how long could your current life continue before things got scary? That is a very revealing question. For a lot of people, the answer is shorter than they want to admit. Maybe a few weeks, maybe a month, maybe less. That is why emergency savings matter so much. People sometimes dismiss cash reserves because they are focused on maximizing returns. I get it, investing matters. Yet liquidity buys a different kind of value. It buys calm. It buys decision-making power. It buys the ability to handle a problem without instantly becoming desperate. That is a huge quality of life upgrade. A person with 6 months of expenses saved has a completely different emotional relationship with work, bad luck, and uncertainty than someone with 11 days. Same city, same age, maybe wildly different salaries. Still, the person with more runway is often the one with more real freedom. Because freedom is not the car. It is the ability to survive without panic if the job disappears. Freedom is not the apartment. It is the ability to say no to a bad situation because your bills are not immediately hunting you. Freedom is not looking rich. It is having enough margin that one mistake, one repair, one ugly month does not shake the whole structure. That is what wealth starts to feel like in real life. Less drama, less fragility, less dependence on the next paycheck, more room. Which brings us back to Jake and Maya. Jake is not foolish. He is not uniquely irresponsible. He is just running a very common script. He let his lifestyle expand every time his income did. He normalized expensive fixed costs. He financed convenience. He upgraded often. He let social proof shape his spending more than he realized. He saved inconsistently because he treated saving like something he would do with whatever happened to be left over. That approach can look successful for years. It can even feel successful for years, right up until you notice that the outside of your life improved faster than the inside of it. Maya ran a different script. She kept her fixed costs under control. She did not race to match every raise with a more expensive identity. She used automation. She delayed purchases. She kept things longer. She built cash reserves. She invested early and consistently. She let her income rise without asking her lifestyle to keep pace every single time. And over time, that creates something incredibly powerful: stability that compounds. This is the quiet part of money that rarely gets celebrated. The goal is not to look impressive from across the room. The goal is to make your future less fragile, to build a life where you can absorb shocks, make choices slowly, ignore some pressure, walk away when you need to, sleep better, think more clearly. That is a richer life, even if it photographs worse. So if you are wondering which person you are becoming, here's the simplest test. When your income rises, does your freedom rise too? Or do your obligations rise faster? That question will tell you almost everything. Because the difference between feeling rich and being wealthy is often hiding in that gap. And the good news is, this can change surprisingly fast once you notice the pattern. You do not need to fix everything this week. Just start with the lever that gives you the most relief. Maybe it is reducing fixed costs. Maybe it is automating investing. Maybe it is killing the random subscriptions. Maybe it is putting a delay between wanting and buying. Maybe it is finally building your emergency fund. Maybe it is deciding that your next raise is going to your future before your lifestyle gets a vote. Start there, then keep going. Because financial stability is usually built through ordinary decisions repeated for a long time. Quiet decisions, unphotogenic decisions, the kind nobody claps for, until one day your life feels lighter. And that is the payoff. If you want more videos on money, investing, saving, and building long-term financial freedom, subscribe to Liam Invests, and I'll see you in the next one.